Galactic Warlords tried to control a beast with a human child, but what happened next defied everything. In the vastness of space, there existed a powerful empire named Tegnar, known for its unrivaled military strength and its ambition to conquer distant planets to expand its power. Tegnar not only relied on conventional military tactics, but also possessed an ultimate weapon, Behemoth. These gigantic creatures, created and trained long ago, were symbols of unstoppable destruction. They could wipe out entire civilizations in a single night. With their boundless destructive power and enormous size, behemoths were like living tsunamis, and no one dared stand against them. However, beneath their brutal exterior, many wondered, was there something hidden within these creatures that no one, even the leaders of Tegnar, could understand? Tegnar, with its ruthless strategies and schemes to dominate the universe, had already defeated many planets. One of them was the planet Mira, home to a peaceful family in a world full of pristine nature and simplicity. From lush green forests to snow-covered mountains, Mira was a place where nature was revered, and humans lived in harmony with the earth. But that peace didn't last long. After a sudden attack by Tegnar's army, Mira was occupied. Behemoths were unleashed in the cities, driving the residents into devastation. Fire and smoke filled the sky, and the desperate cries of the citizens echoed through space, leaving only death and destruction. Amidst the rubble, an 8-year-old girl named Elara was running for her life. Her brown hair was disheveled, her large eyes full of fear, but also a resilient strength. She didn't know where her parents were, but one thing she knew for certain: her planet had been taken, and she was just a fragment of the storm of war. But Elara was no ordinary girl. She possessed a strange ability that no one in her family or community had ever known about: the ability to sense and communicate with dangerous creatures, beings that humans could only fear and avoid. This sensation came from impulses, from faint flashes of light in her mind, whispers only she could hear. But this very gift made Elara the target of Tegnar. During the chaos, Elara was kidnapped and taken aboard a Tegnar warship. She was locked in a small, cold room, the walls around her as cold as steel. Outside, the roars of behemoths and the sounds of spacecraft engines preparing for the next war echoed. In that room, Elara could easily spot the thick steel doors, the armed guards, and an overwhelming sense of suffocation. She didn't know where she was being taken or what was to come, but an instinct told her that everything wasn't just about her survival. They had seen her special ability, and she could not avoid becoming part of Tegnar's plan. Elara woke up in a pitch-black room where there was no natural light, only the faint glow of lights from the ceiling casting weak beams on the cold walls. She couldn't remember how long she had slept, only that the air in the room was thick, as if it wanted to bury all hope. This room was unlike any place she had ever seen. There were no windows, no familiar sounds of her previous life, only a strange silence, as if it were hiding some dark secret. Her legs were shackled in heavy chains, her hands were cuffed. The Tegnar guards, with their cold faces and hollow eyes, were the ones who had been watching over her. But now they were gone. The room was empty, just her and the darkness, with an unsettling sense of anxiety building inside her. Suddenly, a sound echoed from within the room. Was it footsteps? or just the noise of old steel pipes creaking in the silent space. Elara couldn't be sure, but she knew that something big was coming closer. She turned around, unaware that this moment would change her life forever.
You are listening to this story on the Moonlit West Tales Library channel. Please like and subscribe to support the growth of our community. We will continue the story right after this.
The dim light from the ceiling lamps illuminated a massive shape lying motionless in the dark. It was a creature that even the Tegnar soldiers feared. Gorrath, a behemoth, a beast she had never heard of but quickly recognized as a force of destruction. Gorrath's body was huge, muscular, with scales as shiny and hard as steel. Its eyes, red like fire, gleamed with a brutal power that could make anyone who looked into them tremble. Its sharp, long teeth like daggers could tear through anything within reach. Every step it took made the ground tremble slightly. Elara gradually stepped closer to Gorrath, her small hands reaching out, and then the unexpected happened. Instead of attacking her as she had expected, Gorrath simply stood there, its gaze toward her filled with hesitation, as if it had never encountered anyone like her before. It didn't tear into her as it should have. They stood there, looking at each other in silence, in a space where everything could break apart in an instant. Sensing something different in the air, Elara parted her lips and spoke softly, as if conversing with an old friend. "I don't know why I'm here, but I hope there will be a day when I am free. I've lost too much already," she said, not thinking that her words would have any effect. But at that moment, she felt a change. The space seemed to slow down, and a low growl from Gorrath echoed, not a growl of aggression, but a deep sigh, as if it were sensing what she had just said. Elara wasn't afraid. She continued speaking gently, as if she had found some anchor amidst the chaos. "I know you are a powerful creature, but you're not a monster, are you?" she asked, pausing for a moment to look into Gorrath's eyes, as if searching for an answer in its gaze. For the first time in its life, Gorrath felt an indescribable sense of empathy. This feeling was as though a shell had been peeled away, revealing a silent heart, full of loneliness. It was no longer a brutal warrior, no longer a tool of Tegnar. In that moment, Gorrath didn't feel hatred or contempt. Instead, it felt a strange connection to Elara, a connection it could not explain. A part of it deep inside began to want to protect her, not because of orders, but because of this feeling of compassion. Elara continued, sensing that she was opening some path within the creature's mind. She spoke more, telling Gorrath about her life before, about the planet Mira, the green forests, her family, and her dreams. And strangely, Gorrath listened, not with its ears, but with something invisible. It heard those words, understanding part of them deep within its being. In this way, a strange bond gradually formed between Elara and Gorrath. It wasn't one of control or hatred, but of empathy, of shared understanding in a world where there was no room for emotions, only the strong and the weak. But Elara, though a small child, had broken that boundary. She didn't see Gorrath as a monster. She saw it as a creature searching for something it had never had: love and peace. Elara continued to spend time by Gorrath's side, feeling each day pass slowly and patiently. The bond between her and the giant creature grew deeper and more meaningful. Every morning, Elara would approach Gorrath, talking to it about simple things. The memories of home. The peaceful days on the planet Mira. Gorrath. Though it couldn't respond in words, Elara could sense the change in its eyes. It no longer looked at her with the coldness of a warrior, but at times, those eyes showed gentleness and concern, as if it understood her more than ever. However, above, where the leaders of Tegnar, the Warlords, were watching everything unfold, they couldn't understand this strange relationship. For thousands of years, they had used behemoths as tools of war, creatures without hearts, existing only to serve the purpose of destruction. Now, a child, only 8 years old, had made a behemoth change its nature. This was unacceptable to those in power in Tegnar. They couldn't let a powerful creature like Gorrath be bound by emotions, by the compassion that Elara had instilled in it. They needed to control it, to use it as the weapon it was meant to be. One day, while Elara was sitting beside Gorrath, gently stroking its massive head, a group of warlords entered the cell. Their eyes were cold, devoid of any sympathy. Standing at the front, the leader of the group, with a stern and commanding face, ordered one of the guards, "Bring the girl here. We need to conduct an experiment." Elara sensed the tension in the air. She didn't want to leave Gorrath, but Elara looked at the indifferent faces around her. She felt as though she were being thrust into a game she didn't want to play. She couldn't understand why they wanted to experiment with this. She didn't want to control Gorrath, didn't want to turn it into a tool of destruction. But, facing the coldness of the warlords, Elara had no choice but to comply. She turned back to Gorrath, her heart suddenly heavy. The creature she had bonded with for so long was now being pushed into a dangerous situation. She took a deep breath and walked toward Gorrath, her voice trembling but trying to remain calm. "Thorn, they want us to do things we don't want to do, but I will never make you hurt anyone. I promise." Elara reached out her hand and gently placed it on Gorrath's scales. A silence enveloped the room, with only the faint sound of breath from the massive body. But then, Gorrath subtly shifted, its red eyes still fixed on Elara, its gaze no longer filled with brutality, but hesitation. As Elara ordered Gorrath to carry out the task, she felt the hesitation deep within the creature. Gorrath stood still, its eyes never leaving her, and a sense of pain flashed in that gaze. It didn't want to do this. It didn't want to destroy anything. But Elara understood that Gorrath was torn. What she had taught it about love and life conflicted with the order she had to give. And that made it painful. Gorrath began to hesitate. Its massive body trembled slightly, its legs unwilling to move. Elara looked at it, feeling the resistance from Gorrath's very body. It didn't want to harm anyone, especially when the little girl, the only one who had treated it with kindness, was looking at it with eyes full of expectation, hoping it wouldn't become a weapon of destruction. Elara's emotions were torn. She realized that if she continued, she would break everything she had worked to build. She couldn't let Gorrath return to its brutal instincts. She had to free it, not just for herself, but for the life she believed existed within this creature. She turned back to the warlords, her gaze now resolute. "I won't do it," she said. Gorrath is not your weapon. It is a creature with emotions, with a soul. The warlords were displeased with this answer, but they couldn't force the girl to do something against her conscience. One of them gritted his teeth. We'll find another way. The girl doesn't understand her power. But Elara no longer cared about their words. She'd made up her mind. She would protect Gorrath, and she would do whatever it took to help it escape the constraints of Tegnar, even if it meant facing unimaginable challenges and dangers. Elara sat alone in the dark room, but her mind never stopped thinking. She had spent many days, even weeks, observing the Tegnar base, memorizing every detail, every weakness she could exploit. She had watched the guards, the patrol routes, and even the security mechanisms that Tegnar believed to be impenetrable. But Elara knew, with her intelligence and abilities, she could find a way. After all, she understood Gorrath better than anyone else. She knew that it wasn't a brutal tool, but a creature that could change. And that change began with her thoughts. Gorrath, though powerful and capable of destroying everything, had a fragile heart when it came to the emotions she had instilled in it. She knew that if she wanted to free Gorrath, she had to act quickly. And without Gorrath, she would never escape this place. She began to build her plan. First, she examined the secret passages in the base, the doors that few noticed. She had seen these doors open at night, when there was less supervision. Next, she figured out how to distract the guards and bypass the defense systems by exploiting their weaknesses, the negligence during their shifts, the lack of checks in areas less frequently visited. She knew that Gorrath was the key to everything. This creature was too powerful and too massive for anyone to stop. If she could lead it at the right moment, they would have their only chance to escape. In the days that followed, Elara and Gorrath continued to build their bond, trust not only between them, but also in each other for the arduous journey ahead. One night, when the base seemed quieter than ever, Elara sensed that this was the best moment. Elara moved closer, placing her hand on Gorrath's scales, gently, as if not wanting to break the moment. She whispered, her voice trembling, but full of determination. "It's time. Together, we'll get out of here." Gorrath lowered its head, as if it understood there was no other choice. Together, they moved toward the emergency exits. Elara's heart raced, but she knew there was no turning back. Her small footsteps and the heavy steps of Gorrath echoed in the darkness. The first obstacles appeared when they neared the security area. The guards were on high alert, but Elara was ready. She quietly pressed a control panel, causing a part of the security system to malfunction, just enough for them to slip through without being detected. The sound of Gorrath's movements caused a slight tremor in the air. Elara carefully directed it, guiding it through narrow areas, avoiding security cameras and guard posts. She had to be extremely swift and cautious. Each step could mark the failure of both of them, but they had no other choice. The whole base felt like a maze, but Elara felt she was getting closer to freedom. In a long hallway, they encountered a group of guards. They didn't notice Elara immediately, but Gorrath stood right there, silently waiting for a command. In the crucial moment, Elara signaled Gorrath, but instead of attacking, she only asked Gorrath to remain still. She cautiously stepped forward, hiding behind a large pillar, watching the guards' movements. Thanks to Gorrath's silence and Elara's intelligence, They managed to pass without a sound and without being detected. Finally, they reached an area near the spacecraft bay where thick iron doors and powerful defense systems blocked their way. Elara looked at Gorrath, her gaze determined but also filled with worry. This was the hardest part. She knew they would face strong resistance from the guards here, and these doors wouldn't be easily breached. But Gorrath was ready. It charged at the doors, striking them with force, and, with its superior strength, the large iron doors shattered with a loud crack. The noise shook the entire base, and Elara felt the urgency in the air. They had only one chance left. With Gorrath's help, Elara quickly accessed the spacecraft's ignition system, and after a few tense seconds, she activated it. A door to the ship opened, and freedom was now right before them. Elara looked at Gorrath one last time before stepping into the ship. From that moment on, their lives would never be the same. The feeling of freedom was right in front of her. But in that moment, Elara felt something silently weigh down on her heart. The spaceship door was wide open, the light from inside shining out, inviting her to step in, but her steps stopped before the threshold. Behind her, Gorrath still stood, its massive form, the glossy black scales reflecting the dim light from the ship. Its red eyes didn't look at her with hatred or anger, but with a deeper emotion, an emotion Elara couldn't name. Just as she was about to step into the ship, a noise came from behind her, leaving no doubt that the Tegnar army had discovered their hiding place. A group of soldiers marched forward, weapons ready. Elara heard the heavy footsteps, but what she felt most was Gorrath's gaze. It turned its head, its eyes seemingly trying to say something to her, though no words could escape. Gorrath understood. Despite its power to destroy an entire army, this spaceship was not big enough to contain its enormous body. It couldn't escape with Elara. It knew that if Elara wanted to survive, if she wanted freedom, there was only one way: its own sacrifice. Gorrath's massive legs hit the ground, causing the earth to tremble. It didn't step into the ship, but instead took a step back, forming a wall right in front of Elara. Its red eyes locked on the approaching Tegnar soldiers, the gaze no longer one of hesitation or fear, but absolute resolve. It wouldn't let Elara be caught again, wouldn't let her be separated from the freedom she deserved. Elara looked into Gorrath's eyes, her heart breaking in that moment. She didn't want to leave it. She didn't want to leave it behind to fight alone while she ran away. But as the Tegnar soldiers drew near, Gorrath didn't hesitate. It let out a roar that echoed throughout the base, shaking the air. Gorrath charged, sweeping through the army with its powerful tail, sending the invaders flying. Gunshots rang out, but the bullets hitting Gorrath's steel-like scales were nothing more than shattered stones, unable to penetrate its armor. Elara stepped back, her heart constricted with an indescribable pain. She turned back to look at Gorrath, seeing it grow weary, yet it continued to fight, standing firm to protect her. Its gaze never left her, as if saying, "Go. You must live. You must be free." Step by step, Elara entered the spaceship. She couldn't turn back, but her heart remained with Gorrath. As the ship's door began to close, she screamed, "Gorrath!" But her cry was swallowed up by the vast space. She could do nothing but look into its eyes, the eyes that had protected her at all costs. And in that moment, Elara knew that Gorrath wouldn't win this final battle. Its body was exhausted, the wounds from the Tegnar assaults gradually draining its strength. But in that brief moment, Gorrath had found its ultimate purpose in life. It wasn't war, it wasn't destruction, but to protect Elara, a child it had chosen to love, a child it had guarded to its last breath. When the ship's door slammed shut, Elara could no longer see Gorrath. But in her mind, the image of Gorrath, strong, resilient, and ultimately sacrificing itself, would never fade. She knew that wherever she went, however many years passed, Gorrath would always be the first friend, the greatest hero in her heart. When Elara returned to Earth, she didn't just carry a story of her own life, but a story that transcended the boundaries of space and time, about a creature that had forsaken its brutal instincts to love. Gorrath, a creature long known only as a massive tool of destruction, had now become a symbol of sacrifice and friendship. The story of it didn't just spread across distant planets, but reverberated throughout Earth. Elara knew that, although she was the only one who survived that journey, it was Gorrath who had made the change. The story of Elara and Gorrath quickly became a legend. People from all over Earth heard about Gorrath's sacrifice, about the friendship between a child and a war creature, something no one had ever imagined before. Leaders, scholars, and soldiers from other planets came to Elara to hear her tell the story. She became a symbol of change, an inspiration for the movement against war and violence. Gorrath's story showed people that even creatures born only to destroy could change, and they could choose another path, the path of love, loyalty, and sacrifice. Elara conveyed the powerful message that every individual, whether human or creature, could choose the path of transformation. Not long after their story spread, change began to take place on other planets. Civilizations once dominated by Tegnar started questioning their military policies. Gorrath's story awakened something in them they had never thought of. The possibility of change, the possibility of following the path of peace instead of war. Tegnar, despite being a powerful empire, could never have imagined that a creature they once saw as a weapon of destruction would become a symbol of hope and love. The leaders of Tegnar, who had used Gorrath as a weapon, now faced a change within their own ranks. Soldiers and warriors long accustomed to brutality now began to reconsider their purpose. And through this journey, Elara, a fragile girl filled with love and determination, became the storyteller of Gorrath. She became the protector of the legacy Gorrath had left behind. The image of Gorrath, a creature once known only in fear, was now spoken of with admiration and gratitude. Gorrath was not just a warrior, but a loyal friend, one who had forsaken its instinct to destroy in order to protect life and love a small creature. In the stories Elara told, Gorrath became a symbol of love, of the unceasing change in a vast universe. The story of Elara and Gorrath carries a profound message. Looking back on her journey, Elara knew that she wasn't victorious because of strength. She wasn't victorious due to her fighting abilities or the courage that people often see in great warriors. Elara won through love. It was her love for Gorrath that helped her overcome everything, from great dangers to unimaginable hardships. And she became the one to tell the story of Gorrath, the one who changed the universe, a creature no one thought could change, but did so out of love. The story of Elara and Gorrath will live forever in the hearts of those who believe in change and hope. It will never be forgotten, for it is a story of sacrifice, of friendship between a war creature and a child, of finding purpose in life, and of how we all can change, no matter our past. And thus, this story will continue to inspire all those who dare to believe in love and change in a world weary of war and violence. Thank you for taking the time to listen to this incredible story. We hope you've enjoyed the moments spent here and felt the depth and emotion in every page of the story. If you liked this story, don't forget to hit like, subscribe to the Moonlit West Tales Library channel so you won't miss any fascinating stories in the future. Be sure to